Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, it's still a struggle to get paid off TikTok compared to other global platforms. But as Africans, we are very ingenious and we find ways of making money. But the funny thing is, we have not even tried to systemize this knowledge. The only way you find this knowledge is having for you to Google some TikTok star who tells you, hey, I'm making 10,000 a month from my TikTok. And now you sort of, as an artist, have to now reverse engineer this. Okay, as a DJ, as a music producer, as a publisher, how do I do this? And which leaves a lot of artists just disgruntled and they don't even bother. Hence, they just sign whatever deals they want. And then we end up with you saying you got ripped off or someone stole my property. So with these 3 points of basically digital divide gap, policy and access gap, knowledge and capacity gap, what are the policy recommendations for G20 action? So I will give 4. Number 1 is to basically create a G20 African Creators Digital Infrastructure Fund. My colleague Sylvain mentioned as well, from his talk about how funding and capital is such a big issue. We see this problem time and time again in our endeavor, Diaspora Business Hub, whenever we're trying to capacitate diaspora business people. So the recommendations will be around mostly money, finance, but also just capacitating the community and the social space, rather than us always saying, hey, what can government do, etc. So number 1, create like I said, a G20 Africa Creators Digital Infrastructure Fund. So this fund is basically, for example, $100 million fund to basically build digital platforms, provide cloud infrastructure, and secure websites for African music organizations. Why? Because you can't compete in the digital economy without basic infrastructure. And the impact of this is basically we get to probably enable 10,000 African creators to safely access international platforms within 2 years. Number 2, establish a G20 artist mobility framework. What is that? So it's basically streamlined multi-entry cultural visas for verified artists across G20 countries, similar to business visa programs, but only for cultural creators. The mechanism around this can be a digital verification system that can be based on blockchain using artist credentials. The impact of this is basically we get to reduce visa processing from 6 months to 2 weeks, enabling touring as a viable income for artists, not just the big names that are internationally recognized at the airport. Number 3, mandate fair payment systems and data transparency. So what is that? So we need to require streaming platforms operating in the G20 markets to do the following. Provide transparent and real-time royalty data to African creators, which was brought up about how we are cheated out of our royalties compared to the North. Enable direct payments in local currencies with low transaction fees. Share consumption data to help artists understand their markets. Why? Because artists get paid 60% less per stream than Western counterparts, despite comparable audiences. And number 2, they don't have access to data that they can say, oh, wow, I need to make my music like this, like that, in order for getting more fans and more consumption. And the impact of this is we get to increase sustainable income streams by almost 300%. Number 4, launch basically a G20 music business capacity building program. So what is this? Basically annual funding for music business education across Africa. So the way we are taking several kinds of education seriously, we need to start taking the creative arts, the business of the creative arts education seriously. Focusing on digital rights, international contracts, platform optimization, tour management, and that's just to name a few, and delivering this will require us establishing with established programs such as SA Music Week that's hosting us right now, CMW, Maiden. We've got Soul Distro, which is Slicker's new publishing platform that is going pan-African, and so many other platforms in other different African countries. And the target is to train 5,000 creators and managers annually in 20 African cities in the spirit of the G20. And obviously this will cost we're looking at probably $10 million US per year. but that's less than the cost of one military jet, and with the money that we are losing to corruption across Africa, finding this money would not be difficult, which then brings me up to basically my closing call to action. We all know a revolution is happening. There is the fourth industrial revolution. There is the finance revolution. There is the world economy revolution that's happening right now. And African producers are actually producing content that's moving the world. From Amapiano to Afro beats, COVID proved this fact. Opt out of the economic benefits by outdated policies and infrastructure gaps. Going back to also talking about how our governments can't seem to keep up. So the G20 has an opportunity to be on the right side of history by basically investing in digital infrastructure so that African creators can participate safely. We need to reform visa systems so culture can actually cross borders. And this is also a mission, not to just the G20, but the AU as well. And demand transparency from these platforms so that our artists can get paid fully for their money. And apart from that, also get the data they deserve to actually improve their art. And lastly, build capacity so that talent translates into sustainable careers. And building this capacity is taking it seriously by first mobilizing ourselves as the creative space, as the social space to say, you know what, enough is enough. We will not let our artists die in poverty. We will not let our kids give up on music because they say you can't make money from streaming. So the mission here is basically creating clarity, creating smart economic policy so that, we can take advantage of the opportunities we have today. The African music economy is projected to hit 10 billion by 2030. The question is, will the G20 countries partner with us to unlock this growth, or they're going to watch from the sidelines? And we're hoping with events like SA Music Week, we can see what's possible when we combine African creativity with proper infrastructure and international partnerships. And hopefully we can scale this model across the continent. So yeah, hopefully I did not say a mouthful, and thank you for the platform. So yes, over to you, moderator.
Thank you very much. That was it. That was quite a bit to digest. I do believe that Cyril is back in here. So let's see, revert back to you, Mr. Cyril Sadiki.
Mr. Sadiki, you're on mute.
Just unmute, Mr. Sadiki. There should be a microphone button on your bottom left.
Kogo, can you unmute him from your side?
Really, I don't know how to unmute himself.
There he disappeared. Okay, so I think Cyril joined us here for a few seconds, but he's gone now. We're gonna go. Let's go to question C now for the speakers.
Yes, I'm here.
Anybody? Oh, you come through. Yes.
Can you can hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for all the technical glitches. Nice to visually meet all of you. and some faces I have not seen and the voices I've not heard in a very long time. Thank you very much, Dominic and SA Music Week for organizing this. My name is Cyril Sadiki. I'm the MD from Sadmon, the Social Impact Agency. I'd already introduced myself in a way that I've seen this movie across the world, in the creative industry, in the environment industry, in the health, in the energy industry, where you find that those who are ignored in any given industry, they find themselves in a situation where they kind of have to fend for themselves after or prior to the show. If you're watching what is happening in Brazil now, just during the COP30, you'll see almost similar situation is playing itself while the COP is running, and it is upon all of us to be able to take advantages of platforms like this that South African Music Week has created. But truly speaking, when I've listened to all speakers from the beginning of this webinar, I think a lot of good points have been shared that allow all of us who can truly say enough has been spoken, and as the G20 stage has been set and all the creators are probably still on their own. We know about South Africa. Am I back? This is so
You're back, but a little glitchy, but you're back.
Now, I just saw in my neighborhood group that our network is up and down, so that's the reason why we're getting all this.
I see.
Colleague.
Yo, my Africa, this load shedding is a problem. Maybe this is what's it.
And selfishness is an inherent.
I think Siddiqui is gone. Hello, are we all still there? Okay.
I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Linda.
Oh, okay, yes, we're here. Mr. We're going to take some questions now. Let's say Mr. Mike Moeti has his hand up, so let's hear your question, Mr. Mike.
Hello.
Oh, gosh, yes, you're back, yes.
I don't know what's happening. Okay.
You found the right spot.
Yeah.
It's a sweet spot to it.
Yeah, I hope it won't cut again. Look, I was still saying one of the biggest problems that I've listened and heard in my privilege and interacting with the creators, whether it is in dance environment or in music environment, of our artists also contribute to the problems that we're living with, and we need to be able to face that and empower those who are coming on board as new participants to say, how do they avoid that? Their chase of celebrity shouldn't fall them into that individualism that make them not being aware that the more you want to be individual or by yourself, you create a problem or contribute to the problem. But the nature of the collective problem is that if ever we continue to have that, the togetherness and the solidarity that the G20 is trying to achieve or is aspiring towards, be difficult for all of us to achieve whatever conversations that we're going to have in platforms like this. So before I get cut again, Dominic, I would like to say, having had all the insights shared and hoping that participants and audiences that are here are sufficiently empowered, my billboard insight to the African creator will be continue to have disruptive music innovation that has got good music acumen and togetherness. If we all feel need to ensure that whatever musical innovation that we have is disruptive enough, but is sprinkled with good business acumen, I think we'll start to scratch the surface and we'll start to see the pin moving in terms of the social.
Yeah, I think we're done with Mr. Siddiqui because he's pretty much said his part. So we'll move on to now the questions and answers for everybody. So I will take him off it. I'll take him off it now, and let's get to questions and answers. I know Mike was up there, so Mike, you wanna come soon? If not, Sylvain has a question, so let's put Sylvain for a question. He also has his hand raised. Sylvain, your turn. Sylvain?
Dom, it seems like he took his hand down. I think maybe it might have been a mistake. So maybe we can move on to the next question.
No, I'm the one that took his hand down because I put him on there. So let's see. Let me give him a chance. You want to come on there, Sylvain? Or if not, we're going to move back to Mike because Mike seems to be back. Looks like a lot of people are having challenges today. Okay, Mike, your turn.
Yeah, man. I think this is very inspirational. The discussion that we've just had with the panelists that we've just presented. Kabamba, wow, man, I was really blown away with some of the things you said. But I think the crux of the matter is that what we are facing, and I think Sydney said it very, very well. You know, this webinar should not just be a talk shop. I think with South African Music Week, what we try to do is to make a difference, not just locally, but globally. I think we need to create our own ecosystem because the divide between the global South and the developed North, whatever you call it, it's always going to be there. But I think that there's a wording that says charity needs to begin at home. I think the one thing that I can say is that our systems in our own country, led by our government, is not responsive to the needs of our creative industry. There's just too much red tape, corruption, the whole works. Even in just making a simple phone call, trying to call to speak to a department official, you know, the relevant department, it's a monumental task. It's almost like these people, you know, they treat you like they're doing you a favor. So there's a culture that we need to change in terms of how we do business. And I think I'm very happy to hear what Kapamba laid out clearly, the divide that we have, including, you know, money transfers within Africa itself, let alone going to North America, South America, or Europe. I think I'm really excited that post this event, we can actually set our own pace in how we engage with each other as Africans, you know, because literally our government has failed us even I'll tell you now, I tried to invite a number of them. They took me to Pillar to post. They don't respond to emails. They don't respond to WhatsApp. So that in itself, in a nutshell, is a summary of the challenges that we as the creatives that are leading this industry, we need to set a new path that post this event, especially in terms of, in light of the G20, that the recommendations that we come up with shouldn't just be something, pen on paper. It must be
live streaming is on.
And I'm happy to say this is not the beginning or the end. And I'm really inspired by what I've just heard, from the Seho to Baba to everybody. I think, to Tando, I think the common denominator is that we need to do something. You can see in America with Trump, but I think that's a call to us looking inward, fixing our own foundation. So we have a lot of ideas that I think in terms of the recommendations and the report that we'll put together. We'll be back in March at the live South African Music Week. But between now and then, it will be an opportunity that we won't miss to engage with everybody in the panel so that we can chart a new course. That's my contribution.
Wow, I expected a question, but that was a presentation on its own. We should have included you on this panel. Thank you. Any questions? We're going to actually get another entertainment session and a break here from Daniel again. Daniel, are you in the house? Okay, so it looks like we don't have Daniel yet. I send out scouts to go look for him again and bring him back. He'll play another track for us. I'm gonna give you guys a second chance here for questions and answers here for this panel, because like Michael said, that will some amazing content coming from it. The panelists, and we are going to be going to the next session. So does anybody else have a question other than Michael? Of course, Michael has had his chance. Anybody? No? Okay, so I'm going to move this to the second to the last panel that I've been moderating. This one here is going to be on what role can the G20 play in simplifying artist visa and cross-border collaboration?
Sorry, is it too late for a question? I'm really sorry.
Yeah, because I already moved on.
Okay, then it's fine. It will be valid for the next session as well. I'll use the same question on the next session.
That sounds like a plan. Okay, sure. So our next speakers here are going to be Sipho Dlamini from Gamma Records. Sipho, if you're in the house, can you please raise your hand? We'll see if you're here. And also we're going to have Luis Engel from Big Luke Crew.
Hello, yeah, I'm here.
Wow, what's up?
What's up, Dominic?
It's good to have you. And so, again, I'm still looking for Sipho Dlamini in the house. And also, we're going to have Rosemary Menchi from Za Visa. Can you raise your hand? Rosemary, are you anywhere in the house? No? Okay. Let's start it, and we're going to start with Lou. I hope you guys give this young man a warm welcome. I just met him at the in the week venue by venue last week in London, Ontario. It was amazing and energetic. That's why he's here today. So Lou, it's your stage now. Please introduce yourself. Talk a bit about yourself, and you have 5 minutes about yourself, and then address the topic: what role can the G20 play in simplifying artist visas and cross-border collaborations?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Mokakala, and greetings to my fellow panelists, as well as everyone else joining in on this global conversation. It's an honor to contribute as we discuss, the future of Africa's creative economy at such, I would say, a pivotal moment. It was super fun meeting you last week at Venue by Venue. I'm a local musician here in London, Ontario, Canada, but I'm born and raised in Ghana. So this is a little bit, but I do, in terms of the load shedding, we have that a lot back home too. But I'm awarding is the spirit of Ubuntu and unity, and the powerful symbolism in summit events like India's G20 orchestra, where artists from different diverse nations perform to echo the theme, one earth, one family, one future. Even the G20's emblem has turned to musical symbolism, and we see this in the lotus logo representing 7 continents and the 7 notes in music's universal language. This reminds us that harmony thrives in diversity. Gala events, we have artistic collaborations, and even the soundscapes of protest and dialogue around G20 summits reminds us that music has a double role. It entertains and it heals, but it also protests. It pushes boundaries and it makes our collective challenges heard. As G20 ministers of culture, they're now regularly meeting and issuing powerful declarations, including, for example, the Salvador de Bahia Declaration last November, I believe. They affirm that culture and heritage are not afterthoughts, but they're actually recognized as drivers for sustainable development, for inclusion, and for resilience in the face of global challenges. So you might be thinking, why does any of this matter? And I would say that the evidence is very clear. Music events themselves are proven engines of economic, social, cultural, and economic vitality. First and foremost, economically, where we're really focused on. They draw tourism, they generate revenue, they spark new business growth, they create jobs and long-term investments in local infrastructure. Outside of the economics, socially and culturally, music builds pride, it builds identity and belonging, it creates spaces for healing, empowerment, and the celebration of community diversity. They also allow space for the launching of new artists. They facilitate cultural exchanges, and they expand our perspectives through authentic experiences shared by all. Most importantly, international collaboration between musicians is the source of most innovative and moving work. I would say that when artists across borders collaborate, they become catalysts for innovation, absorbing and exchanging unique traditions, instruments, storytelling methods, and more. These projects don't just push creative boundaries, they literally expand audiences, sharing cultures globally and opening professional doors that might never have existed before. I myself am collaborating with a phenomenal African artist based in Zimbabwe. His name is Hwabarati, and we'll be doing a lot of work in the coming months as well. As I begin to wrap this up, bear with me. We should not overlook hurdles, even as G20 leaders recognize the value of the creative economy. We see artist mobility constrained by complex visa processes, as mentioned earlier, digital rights challenges, as mentioned earlier, and underfunded public investments in culture, as mentioned earlier. South Africa now has a rare opportunity to press for solutions based off of my research. I'm obviously not on the ground, but there is an opportunity for more public financing to be developed. robust protections for creators' rights, and of course, frameworks that ensure artists receive fair pay and have their artistic freedom respected in both physical and digital spaces, as previously mentioned. Let's then harness the current C20 momentum to make sure culture is truly at the center, not the sidelines of global policy. Let's learn from these success stories, and let's keep this momentum going. As the theme of South Africa's G20 presidency reminds us, our greatest progress happens when we unite as one family, sharing our voices and visions through the universal language of music. Thank you.
Thank you for that impressive representation. The two other speakers that we've been waiting for, they're still in line to come in, Rosemary and Sipo. So I would say instead of
Rosemary is present, so perhaps maybe she can go next.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Rosemary. If you can do the honor of introducing yourself, you got 5 minutes, and then answering the question, what role can the G20 play in simplifying artist visas and cross-border collaborations?
Good afternoon, folks. Thanks for having me. My name is Rosemary Menkis. We own a company called ZAR Global Connections, and under that is ZAR Global Visas and Immigration. We have actually been working with a lot of artist visas, Tyler being one of them. We've been facilitating visas for Tyler on all her international tours. Some of them were quite complex because you would find that at times she's in London, she's at Afro Nations, she needs to get a visa, but we managed to even get visas like Canada while she's out of town through our network of facilitation for visas. We've done quite a few for a lot of the artists, Burna Boy, artists that go to Afro Nations, DJ Maphorisa. I remember there was an instance awards when they were, participating in some of the awards, Coachella, Grammy and all that. And I remember an instance where Maphorisa was stuck in Qatar. He needed to be performing at the Grammy Awards. We had to facilitate someone in LA to do a meet and greet at the migration site to facilitate an easy transit to go and perform at the event. So yes, we've been in the space quite a long. We also facilitate a lot of visas for some of the international artists that are performing in South Africa, for international events and as I say, a lot of the concerts as well. And what has been quite key is that Home Affairs has come up with a new visa regulation, which I think was promulgated not so long ago. It's called the short-term work visa tailored for entertainers. It's designed for individuals in the entertainment industry who are coming, and technical crew, dancers, etc., who are coming to work in South Africa at concerts or summer projects. We've facilitated some of them. Those who we facilitated were for Netflix, some of the projects that Netflix and Urban Brew and them were working on, but quite a lot of them as well. So, someone has mentioned that, cross-border travel needs, we need to actually facilitate ease of travel for artists throughout Africa. And I'm pleased to say that with the Home Affairs, they've already established this link, which is a 3-month work visa and can be extended for a further 3 months should the projects take a little bit longer. In our last few months that we've been working on this, because we've actually got some professors in entertainment who are moving to South Africa. They want to come and they are crazy about the sounds of Africa and South Africa, and they are wanting to establish themselves in Africa. We are working with a group of about 5 professors who are in the economic creative industry and wants to actually have almost like a second home and contribute towards the success of entertainers, musicians in South Africa. So yes, we really want to position ourselves as a solution provider for a lot of the entertainers going abroad. As I said, we've done quite a few. Some of them are going for different projects overseas. Even with Afro Nations, we managed to even get some artists like 3-year visas so that they don't have to be struggling to be going and applying for visas at short notice. So I think there's a solution that is there, and if we really collaborate and try to understand where the pain points are, we may be able to approach either the embassies or even Home Affairs for a further solution that will enable the artists to have more ease of cross-border travel. I'm with Thandi here. I don't know if Thandi is there for any questions, any type of requests or inquiries. Please feel free. I think Michael will give you our details so that we can facilitate some of your travels, inward or outbound.
Thank you very much, Rosemary, for that. Appreciate that. Now, do we know if Mr. Sipho is back in there? Good people, is Mr. Sipho in the house? No, I don't think so. So anyway,
I don't.
Pardon me?
I don't know if you can hear me, but I am on. I've managed to log in.
Oh, now, yes, we can hear you now. No worries. Thank you very much. I understand there are issues in terms of logging in, and especially with us changing platforms and all that. Mr. Lamini, the question was, what role can the G20 play in simplifying artist visas and cross-border collaborations? And so you have 5 minutes to address us, and also to tell us a little bit about yourself before you address that.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel and conversation. It's an honor to be here amongst everyone else that's participating. My role started firstly in the mid-90s, where I was producing.
Go ahead, sorry. I muted it.
I need to come out of this.
I think you muted Sipho, not Michael.
Come on.
Yeah, Michael, you muted. So sorry, we muted you also, Mr. And Mr. Mike, can you mute yourself?
Okay, yes. Okay, I'm unmuted. Yeah, sorry. I'll before addressing the question, I'll just give a short background on myself. I started doing concerts and festivals in the UK in the mid-90s. My friends and I realized that there was a gap where there were a lot of Southern Africans, but there was no place for them to enjoy music from Southern Africa. So we started by doing club nights where we would import CDs. At the time, there was no MP3s and all that. We'd import CDs from South Africa and Zimbabwe, and we would hold parties where we played music from the region. Then the first concert we did was to bring TKZ, Boom Shaka, Oskido, Vinny Da Vinci, and DJ Christos to come and do a concert in the UK. That was in 1996. And then it became a thing that we did a few times a year. So during that period, we did everyone from Mandozan, Du, Arthur, Brenda Fassi, Trombies, and so forth. When I moved to South Africa to manage TKZ, we set up the partnership at BMG Records for TKZ Records, and then released a number of projects with them. Then I joined a company called Creative Kingdom USA, where we released music from several artists in the R&B, hip hop, and Kwaito space. In 2006, I moved to Dubai, where I was appointed as Vice President of Operations for a festival company. During that period of 2006 up to 2009, we did concerts for Kanye West, for 50 Cent and G Unit, for Robert Plant, Ziggy Marley, Josh Stone, and many international artists in that region. Then I moved back to South Africa to work on the opening and closing ceremony for the Confed Cup in 2009, then the World Cup in 2010. Then I joined Samro in 2012 and left Samro in 2016 when I was CEO. I had been CEO for 2 years prior to leaving, because when I first started, I was General Manager and Head of Business Development. I left Samro to join Universal Music Group, where I was Managing Director of Sub-Saharan Africa, and then became CEO of Universal Music until 2016. At the label, we signed and worked with everybody from Black Coffee to Lady Zamar to Heavy K to Mafigi Zolo, Prince KB, Nasty C, and many other artists. I left Universal in 2023 to become President and Managing Director for Gamma, Africa and Middle East. So I operate across Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Dubai, and Saudi Arabia. At the label, we've signed Mariah Carey. We have a partnership with Snoop Dogg and Death Row Records and release all their music. We signed and released Usher's latest album. We work with Rick Ross and many other artists. From the continent, we've been working with Ashake, released his last single out of Nigeria. Molly, who had a huge hit, Shake It to the Max, who's half Ghanaian and half American. We work in South Africa with artists like Morda, DJ Zinhle, Usmamani, Angelic, Lehleza, Hle, who's a gospel artist, Dr. Dumi, and many other artists. If I'm correct, the question was relating to cross-border movement in the continent. Was that correct?
It's not necessarily the continent, but yes, it's simplifying artist visas and cross-border collaboration.
Yes. I think this is a huge challenge, especially for artists and for the music industry, because very often, for example, in the sector of live performances, promoters who are promoting festivals and who own nightclubs and produce events often require artists to travel within a 2-week to 4-week period. It's not always far advanced events where, you know, they can say to an artist in 6 months' time, we want you to come, because very often they're reacting to music that is hot at the moment. So if an artist releases a song in South Africa, he has a hit or she has a hit across the continent, and promoters in Nigeria and promoters in Kenya want that artist to come and perform. The biggest challenge we always have is enabling artists to be able to fulfill those booking requirements, because it can often take 2 weeks before you get a visa to travel to any of these neighboring countries in the continent. Sometimes you're required to lodge your passport at the embassy in order to get the visa approved. Sometimes the requirements of these visas are also very, very strenuous. So some of the informal promoters and nightclub owners might not be able to fulfill the requirements that are placed. In some instances, some embassies will require proof of earnings and bank statements that show earnings. Artist earnings are sometimes inconsistent, so it's hard for them to prove or to provide a track record of earnings that might qualify for visa applications. But essentially, what we find is that artists miss out on a lot of opportunities because of visa requirements and having to apply for visas. In some instances, they don't qualify, or the visas take too long, so they miss the opportunity to travel and execute these gigs. What you end up finding is the few artists that have either American or British passports are the ones that are then able to take these gigs and travel. At the moment, ironically, it's actually easier to get artists from Southern Africa visas to go to the Middle East than it might, quicker as well, than it might be to get, artists from Southern Africa to go to West Africa. You'll find that if you're applying for a visa with a South African passport or a Zimbabwean passport or a Zambian or Botswana passport to go to the Middle East, to Dubai, you can normally get approval within a 48-hour period. It's an online process. You don't need to lodge your passport at any embassy. All you need to do is to send a copy of your passport picture, and it can be processed online without you having to travel or move anywhere. Whereas it's often a lot more complicated getting visas for countries. I know that Kenya did simplify the process. So, it might be some countries like Kenya and Tanzania, it is easier, but I definitely know that between Nigeria and South Africa, it's still complicated. The other issue that we have, it's not just the process of getting visas and travel, it's payments and making payments. Very often you'll find that it takes you long, and you often don't get approval if you're trying to make a payment from a South African bank account to a Nigerian bank account and vice versa. It's actually easier for people outside of Africa to send money into African countries than it is to pay within the continent. And the time that it takes the Reserve Bank of South Africa to clear these payments. In fact, I remember when at Universal, we were trying to make a payment to Kenya, and the Reserve Bank declined making that payment, although it was a valid payment to an artist in Kenya. They declined us twice. It took us over a month to get that payment cleared. At times when we're making payments to Nigeria, to the Universal Office in Nigeria, the same issue would happen. And our payments would get rejected by the Reserve Bank, and we'd have to repeat and try and do those payments again. And I know that it is equally tough and complicated to make payments from Nigeria into South Africa. So again, what you find is if a promoter wants to book an artist and they need to pay a 50% deposit, it's complicated to make the 50% deposit, and they end up making payments through unofficial channels. So paying somebody who has an account in Nigeria, who also has an account in South Africa, who then makes the payment, which is obviously more costly than doing it the proper way, and vice versa. Often people in South Africa will pay somebody in Nigeria who has a bank account in Nigeria, and then they make the payment to the relevant party. So I think if we could, plead with the government to make the ability to get visas amongst African travelers, and to find ways to make the banking systems talk to each other a lot quicker, these two very simple things will increase the traffic and performances between countries on the continent, which creates a much more stronger and a much more attractive economic environment for the industry. That's all. I'm open to tackle any questions if there are any.
That's amazing. Thank you very much, man. Every panel seems to grow with more interesting information. It's amazing. Now, it's time for the participants' questions. So let's hear questions. You can raise your hand. Say, I know there was somebody that I disrupted from last time. Was it you, Silver? That had a question?
Yeah.
Yes, please go on.
Okay. The question was some kind of concern. I don't know if I've missed the point. I know that raising these particular topics in the context of the G20 is relevant to the current context. But is the G20 the right platform to address some of these issues? Why are these issues not discussed in a more African context, in the African Union or other body which is relevant to the continent?
I think at this point in time, why we did decided this platform was good because I think we get to speak north to south and include the north and the south. But I'll let the panelists take a shot at this question and see if they have any answers. Brother Sipo, you have an answer there?
I must admit that, for me, the G20 topics of discussion that have been set, I'm not very familiar with them. But I do think that, the issues that we're dealing with, we have to start fixing things at home before we can expect people to fix things for us overseas. My passion has always been enabling African artists, number one, to find it viable to sustain their livelihood by touring on the continent. So before we look to try and tour in the UK and the US and those international markets, which are much more complicated, we need to be able to establish touring circuits and markets on the continent for us to be able to work. Then the next layer is international touring. So I think there are parts of this conversation which are relevant to international touring, because equally getting visas to the UK and getting visas to the US and France has become extremely more difficult for Africans than it ever was before. The requirements are much more complicated, the paperwork that's needed. Again, applying for visas to go to France or to Schengen countries, you need to be able to provide up to 6 months bank statements. And very often, artists and musicians might not have the steady income that these embassies wish to see. We've seen with festivals like Afro Nation taking place in Portugal, where several artists were declined visas to be able to go and fulfill their contractual obligation. Even with Coachella in the US, there are several artists who also were booked to perform at Coachella and weren't able to go and pay. So to answer the question, I do think these conversations about visas and being able to travel, cross-border travel, is important, and it's good for the international community to hear them. I was simply starting from the context of the African problem before going on to the international problem.
Absolutely. And Lou?
Yes.
Lou from the diaspora, what's your take on that question?
I really like Sifo's answer, and to add to it, I think that absolutely it is the role of G20 to at least fully do their best to understand what is happening, to put their foot on the ground level and to take in the perspectives of the people that are actually doing it, to help elevate the whole, because there is a surplus of research that shows that music and arts and culture dramatically affect economics. And if that's what their overarching goal is, then boom, it ties in. But not only to say that they should be doing this, yes, the other organizations that were mentioned in the question, I think they should also be doing this. And why not be here also part of the conversation? Excuse me if they are, I might be a little bit ignorant around that, but why not work together with the different resources that these different powers have, these different organizations have to create long-lasting, impactful change today, not in 10 years. Oh, let's think about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's do the things that we can do now and then keep momentum going. I think everyone should be part of it. Thank you for asking the question.
Absolutely. David, go ahead.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much to the panelists for this very interesting conversation. So my conversation from my side, especially listening to how Sipho was saying that ever since 1996, you guys have been like exporting talent to that side. So my question is more on the ground, in a sense of building these relationships. So how would one go about building and nurturing these relationships? And Sipho, you did mention the Middle East. Which other countries would you say are South African friendly from a visa perspective? Thank you.
Thank you. Should I respond to that, or should we take the other question from
Yes, basically, that was directed to you for you.
Okay.
For you, so please take it.
Yeah, so the countries that I've found are friendly to South Africans in getting visas is the UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. Those three in particular have, especially Qatar and UAE, have got very strong music markets where Amapiano, house music, Afro tech is specifically being played at many of the clubs and many of the festivals. So I've seen, for me, a record number of artists from South Africa traveling to these markets to do shows. Almost every week there's an artist or a DJ in the UAE at one of the clubs or festivals. Also more going into Qatar. Saudi Arabia is slowly starting to get there. There are more events that are being booked and produced in Saudi Arabia. For example, I know Black Coffee's DJing at a festival at the end of the year in Saudi Arabia too. So that was the one point. I think there was another question attached to it, sorry, but I can't recall what it was. If you just remind me, I'll be happy to cover it too.
In terms of nurturing and building relationships internationally, how does one go about it?
I think it's just attending as many conferences as you can, even if they're online conferences, and networking. I remember, I started building the network by attending MIDEM, because at the time in the late 90s, MIDEM was one of the strong music markets. Then there were others in the US as well that I would attend, and I found that going to those conferences, exchanging numbers, listening into the panels, identifying people that are open and that seem willing to collaborate with the continent and building a relationship. So it's not easy. I think what has made it easier now, though, is social media. Being able to use LinkedIn and Instagram and those platforms. People often think of Instagram as an entertainment or a content creators platform, but it is also a very useful business tool, because what you'll find is most of the people that are in the music industry or entertainment industry are on Instagram. They might not post a lot, but they're on Instagram because they need to see what trends are happening, what music is being posted, what artists are doing. So if you engage, in a business way with people, you can use those social media tools to find those contacts. So you don't need to travel and attend an international music market. If you go onto Instagram and I do the research and identify which executives or which promoters, which festival organizers are there and which markets you're interested in. And if you reach out to them in a formal manner, you'll find that they're willing to share their email addresses if they see that it's a proper formal engagement and it's not just, social chatter. So I think, doing the research, using the these social media platforms. LinkedIn is great, definitely. That's the first place I would go. But also, don't overlook the likes of Instagram and Facebook and X, because very often a lot of these execs and a lot of people that are in the festival and club business are there, and they're looking to see what talents and trends are taking place.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that answer. There's two more questions we're going to take, and then we'll go into segue into a performance again by Daniel. He'll play us into an outro, and then I'll be handing over to my co-moderator in the band. We'll be taking on the next sessions after that. So two questions, one from Michael and one from Mr. Kabamba. So Michael, you go first.
I think for me, really, it's more than just a question. It's also a comment. I just want to say that, the issues that Sipho and Rosemary have touched on, they're very, very serious issues. And I think I want to say that an example is what we are doing in South African Music Week, is that we're grooming talent for the international market. As a result of that, we have an artist. He does what we call Kasi Rock. We fortunately got a grant from our National Department of Sports, Arts and Culture to take him on a tour of Canada. And so what then happened is we applied for the visa. And the events that we had planned to attend expired in Canada. We're still sitting with the situation right now. We're trying to work on Plan B. We've actually secured the services of a visa agency, which is represented by Rosemary, because she works with diplomats and these embassies. She knows the terrain. But on the other hand, the department is now putting a deadline on when that grant should be expended. We've now made an appeal to them that we need to have a Plan B. If we don't get a visa from Canada, we should at least take the artists on a Southern Africa tour. So we're still waiting to see what's going to happen. They actually gave us a deadline of the 22nd. What I'm pointing out is primarily a couple of issues. One is a disconnect between the creatives and our government. I think what needs to happen is that we need to have a dialogue. We need to have a sit down with the minister to say to him, look, let's have a dialogue on how these things are handled, because a lot of the major issues of artists having problems, they're beyond, the capacity of artists to engage governments to make things happen and get those visas. Our government, through our International Department of International Relations, together with the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, including Tourism Department, these people need to be brought into a room. We have a dialogue on how to find solutions, especially in terms of artists that receive grants, and then those grants expire because they never had an opportunity to secure a visa. Those things need to be sorted out with our government, because they are the mouthpiece that engages with these countries. I'll give you one example. Canada just ratified a co-production treaty with Canada, primarily in the content production space, film and television. So there's a very strong relationship with Canada. But when it comes to issuing visas, it becomes like climbing a mountain. So I think these problems can be overcome if we are much more focused at a micro level in engaging our government and having them understand what the problems is. Fortunately, some of us have direct contact with the government, so we are able to talk to the powers that be and try and explain. Sometimes they don't listen. If you go there alone, they don't listen. So my proposition is that if we all sit down, Sipho, Rosemary, and everyone else in this webinar, we formulate a strategy, call a meeting with the ministers that are relevant and have a discussion with them, including our International Department of, DECO, International Relations, so that they understand the importance that artists are playing in literally promoting and bringing revenue from overseas, The other issue that I want to address very quickly before I go is that we need to find a way not to work in silos. I'm doing South African Music Week, pushing my platform very proactively. But I think we need to have a dialogue amongst ourselves so that when we are a collective, it's much easier to sort some of these challenges that each creative entity is facing. Like one of the things that we are working on post us being in the business as South African Music Week for the last 4 years is that we've also been approached by other African countries, the DRC, Uganda, Kenya, to exchange best practices, to take another version of South African Music Week, which we now call Africa Music Week, where we're now establishing franchises. For example, in Zimbabwe in April, you'll know that Bob Marley was there in 1974 when the country had its independence. So we bring the Marley family to come and celebrate the legacy, which will then drive inbound tourism into Zimbabwe. The DRC, we're busy with the Rumble in the Jungle. We actually are renaming that. We're no longer calling it Rumble in the Jungle because the DRC is no longer a jungle. We're calling it a Rumble in the Congo. So in summary, what I'm saying is that we are ready for a dialogue with yourself, Sipho, Rosemary, so that we find a common ground, because the challenges that are faced by creatives cannot be resolved by them. We need to be the ones right in the front, engaging government to government in each country. So that, and I think that there's an appetite. If we work, for example, as South African Music Week, we're working within the SADC space where you have 16 countries. You're bringing those countries together to speak a common language. Then it's much easier to trade in South Africa. One of the other things as a last point is that we are also busy developing an interactive market access guide and export directory. Often these events come and go, but you need a resource that can connect Africa. We're starting with Southern Africa, then we're moving to East Africa. We're also engaging with Nigeria as we speak to celebrate one of their biggest events, to set up Nigeria Africa Music Week, which is Festac. So those connections for us are very important in the continent, so that when we go overseas, we go as a collective, and then we can make some kind of significant progress there. Let me leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael, for that. The next question is going to come from Mr. Kabamba.
No, thanks, moderator. So I've got a very difficult question for the panel, actually, Lou, Rosemary, and Sipho. They represent actually a solution towards a very viable solution towards actually sorting out the visa problem, which I did bring up as well. And the reason why I'm saying this is they have collectively over 50 years of experience with dealing with these borders, embassies, documentation, requirements, and all the different fringe cases that artists have had. I mean, Sipho was mentioning the bank statement issue, which is like the number one killer with almost getting a visa. They always want to see your bank statements and amongst a whole lot of other things. So my question to the panelists is the following. In your experience and everything that you guys have been through with how we are making content with podcasts and we're having webinars and we're having events, how can we create almost, I don't want to say an educational, yes, let me just call it that, an educational and informational campaign, which is aimed at artists, which is aimed at government, which is aimed at border and customs officials, basically at educating everyone, because everyone has been talking about the same thing. It's about creating dialogue with the right stakeholders. But the issue is exactly like Mr. Mike said, you go and talk to the right stakeholder, but they don't listen. And they don't listen because we don't have experience like what the panelists are bringing in individually. You know, to say, I have 10 years of dealing with visa applications. I think that's what's needed to get the message across. Because I can share you a story. Black coffee can almost fly in and out of this country without fail and almost get a special visa all the time. And that's based on a couple of things. The reputation is built, the amount of money he brings to every country he flies into. Everywhere Black coffee goes, someone is making $1 million. So he's an economic asset, has been mentioned by a lot of our speakers. Number two, he's got a brand that everyone knows and is recognizable. which almost just defeats the point of having a visa, and hence that's why they'll fast track things. How do we now take, knowing that, okay, if those are the things that tick the boxes to make someone fly in and out of the country, how do we now take it down to that artist who's just come up with that first hit, and 6 countries want him to come and perform in the country, and they want to do it right now because he just got nominated for an award? So yeah, sorry for being a long-winded question, but I hope you got the gist of it.
Thank you for that. It is quite a long-winded question and injecting with a whole lot of information. And I'm going to have to warn the next moderator to be careful with you guys. Your questions are long. Anyway, I hope the panelists remember some of the questions, and we can open it up for any one of you guys to take it. Whoever's willing to take the question.
Hi, I'm with Tandy here. You know what? There are solutions, and it's just that these solutions require the institutions, as you said, to come together to collaborate on that. And I think we would have to take it to maybe another discussion. We've spoken to Home Affairs about the Home Affairs issues. Okay, just to give you a little bit of background. So I have been working for Invest South Africa. My portfolio was international relations and protocol, basically being business development manager for government in Gauteng, and I was responsible for all the embassies. And things have really become more difficult over time. Now, most of the countries have this perception that South African artists would want to go to Europe, America, wherever, and never come back. So they believe that the reason they decline their visas is because they are seeking to permanently reside in overseas and never come back to South Africa. That's number one. So they will always say that you need to provide certainty that you would come back home. As we say, some of our artists do not earn consistently. There is a solution that we have discussed. Mr. Mweti, and we've spoken a little bit about that. We need to actually, as you said, really go on a campaign drive where we go to the department, the arts and culture, a bank, collaborate with different solutions and create a solution that can help these artists. So they are there. I think it's just a matter of really working for South Africa, and I'm sure that problem will be resolved. But then you're looking at Africa as well. So with the same thing with Africa, we can approach the AFCTFA, which is the wing that supports trade, investment, cultural, diplomacy, and everything. And I think we need another session where we just go into a stretch session with the right stakeholders, and there is a solution. We are definitely, and with Mr. Michael Mweti's creativity, we have discussed these things, and I think we'll work on that. So I can't really answer much, but there are solutions to this problem. And I don't know, Tandy, do you have anything to say, or maybe we can hand over to Mr. Sipho? Because even the embassies, there are some embassies, like the French embassy, like Portugal embassy, they are user-friendly. If, like we've done with some of the Afro nations who had some problems, we ended up having to get the inviting companies who provide maybe statements to say, we are going to ensure that this person returns to their country. There are meetings that we normally go and have with either the French embassy or Portugal embassy, and we motivate for that, and they have listened and have issued visas for those particular applicants. So I think it's just a matter of saying, let's take it off the platform here and have a session on its own. I think from our side, it's over for now.
Yes, this is a sidebar issue now. We're going to really refer this topic for further discussions amongst the participants and other people that are interested in joining. So, South Africa Music Week, it's the mental is on you to organize a session outside the G20 to talk about these things among people that want to find solutions. By the way, this is not just a South Africa issue, it's a worldwide issue, because it's governments that have to talk to the government departments, actually, that also have to coordinate. You go to the Canadian Embassy in Pretoria, they tell you, well, we don't make that decision. It's done by international affairs or global affairs or other group. So it is incumbent on us to work with each other and collaborate. On that note, I do appreciate everybody and the wonderful, insightful information that you've provided. You're honoring us being here. We at South African Music Week cannot express our gratitude beyond this. And now we're going to segue into music by Daniel before we started the new panel with in the band. And I appreciate having you all this afternoon with you guys. And thank you. Have a great day. Daniel, it's your time.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, you're on.
Can you hear me?
A little bit. You're still low. Who's this, Daniel?
Yes, this is Daniel.
Okay, yeah, you're coming back up now. The volume is up now.
Is that better?
Yes, it is better.
All right, cool. Let me just get this ready. Sorry.
Your visual will be good too.
Yep. There we go.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, cool. Sorry for the camera quality. It's a bit stuffy, I know. But yeah, hi everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Daniel Berta. I'm a South African music artist and composer. I make a little bit of everything, but mainly from orchestrations, cinematic orchestrations, to progressive rock and a bit of classical guitar. But today I'm going to be playing one of my upcoming songs that's actually releasing. It's called Awakening Part 2, which is part of Awakening Part 1, which is out now. But yeah, so I hope you like it, and just a little something. Let me just change my input. yeah, and that's just a little snippet of my upcoming song. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and yeah, nice to see you all.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I'm sure everybody enjoyed it. All right. Linda.
Yes. That is me. Good evening, everybody. You know, Joburg today is looking dark and gloomy. So please don't mind me if I'm saying good evening, because it does look like it's an evening already. My name is Linda. The surname is Ben. And I'm going to be taking you through the next panel discussions. I just want to first acknowledge and say thank you to our previous moderator, Dominic. Thank you for a job well done in just guiding us through those panel discussions. The information that was shared is surely very insightful. And based on the discussions, there's a lot that needs to be done within this space. So I just want to check in if we have our next panelists, Jonathan Shaw and Gugunyoni. Jonathan, I've seen you've been active. Is that Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you. Google is here.
Good afternoon, Linda. Good afternoon to everyone. Or should I say good evening? Which would you prefer?
If you're in Joburg, I think you can relate unless you're like Dominic somewhere in Toronto. They're still waking up. Good evening, though. Gugunyoni, are you in the house? I see you.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Ladies and gents, I just
live streaming has stopped.
Okay. I just want to acknowledge and appreciate your patience. I know we are running just over an hour late, and I know that you're still here because you see value in the discussions that are taking place, and we appreciate your patience with us. I'm going to quickly get into the next panel then. We're talking data, sustainability, and measuring social impact beyond the gross domestic product. How does fostering the creative economy directly contribute to social cohesion and intercultural dialogue? So as you had seen earlier on, to you, my panelists, if you can just do an introduction of who you are, your experience in the space, and then perhaps then talk to us to the topic at hand. You have 5 minutes to do that per person. Thank you. And you can go ahead, Jonathan, since I started with your name. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you to everyone for allowing me to be here. Thank you to SA Music Week and the G20 for enabling this session, which I think has been very valuable, and there's been a lot of great information. A quick background about myself, as quick as I can make it. I've been in the music industry for about 20 years. I started lecturing at the University of the Witwatersrand in 2003-4, somewhere around there, specifically within the topic of music business and management. And I myself am a music producer. That's my passion. That's what I prefer to do on a daily basis, is sit and make music. Who wouldn't want to do that? But that is the goal. And I've always try to put myself as the musician first and all the other stuff later, but life gets in the way, and all these discussions that we have around issues within the industry catch up with you. And I have, besides running the music studio and doing the music production side, I've written a book about the music industry called The South African Music Business. I've conducted several major research projects into the music industry as well as the creative industries, stemming from Gauteng to the Eastern Cape to doing research for national government, which is finally coming to fruition this year, I hope, and then into Botswana and their creative industries. I'm now currently lecturing music business and music production at the Academic Institute of Excellence. They have a new school of sound and music, which I am a part of. That's a bit about a background about me and everything that I've been involved in. And today we're talking fostering creative economy. So how I would see that we could build the creative economy. And I thought we'd start with a little bit about measuring and data, because one of the key aspects that's been identified as a gap within the industry is a information gap. We just simply do not have enough information to make informed decisions. And I've typically seen this in terms of conferencing since 2005, going to a lot of the early conferences right through till now, is that we tend to have wheel spins. What I mean by that is the same topics are dredged up over and over and over again. And as an educator and a researcher and somebody who is specifically looking for new information about the industry, I do find it eventually gets to a point where you've heard the same conversations over and over. And there needs to be some sort of, I've suggested a white paper on the music industry, which outlines what we already know about the industry and does not then rehash what is sort of commonly misunderstood about the industry. And there does need to be a general move towards conferencing, which is more at a professional level. What I mean by that is, we cannot have questions around metadata at conferences. And I'm just using that as an example. And it was something that came up earlier, and I'm not saying that it wasn't necessary. But, you know, it's if you're a professional in the industry, these are things you take for granted. They're every day, they're on your lists. It's things that you just do. My feeling is the conversations need to sort of drift to a higher level. And this is one way of being able to determine it. So I'd be interested in having some sort of an academic forum within the industry that specifically revolves around papers and moves that sort of direction in terms of how we talk. And so that's sort of my interest in the measuring and data side of things within the industry. I constantly go and check different websites for the economic indicators within the industry, and it's often hard to find those and to get a sense of the perspective of how the industry is working at the moment. The figure that was mentioned earlier, that the recording industry in South Africa, for example, is just over 100 million rand in value, and 75% of that is international money that flows perceivably outside of the country. And to put that into perspective, now if you take it that the entire sub-Saharan sector within the industry is now, it has 22% growth rate and is one of the largest leading growth areas within the industry in terms of streaming. Now, how much does streaming pay out, right? It's little to nothing to artists. And I've had firsthand experience dealing with this and consulting to a few artists that are trying to unlock their revenue in streaming and to say how much they actually get out of that. And it's relatively little. And I'd be interested to know which artists are sustainably living on streaming revenue. And of course, this then points to a broken model within the industry, and we hope that this gets resolved at some point in the future where there's income that's coming out. But besides that, I know the topic speaks to social impact. In other words, the way I see it, social impact is positive change within society. And how do we then measure this positive change that is coming about? And this is in one way done through the quantitative data, which I've spoken about, some sort of economic indicator that allows us to understand the money. But then there's also the positive case studies within the industry. So if we're thinking Jerusalem or Black Coffee, and these kinds of case studies that need to be documented and people need to become aware of them. And I also think that that's a very key component of the industry, is that we need to be able to record these things over time. They easily get forgotten. So, in the next 5 years, we will have to sort of rehash what has been happening and what needs to be done. So that's one aspect of being able to do measurement within the industry to provide some sort of indication of social impact. But what the creative industry allows and the creative economy allows is social connection, primarily through creativity. So being able to allow artists to be able to work together and create sustainable collaborative partnerships cross-border, to be able to team up with other people in other countries and be able to do different sort of collaborative music, whether it's creating different recordings between different artists in different countries. That needs to be allowed and facilitated and enabled. And of course, music reaches a massively wide audience, and it can unify interest across cultural boundaries. So in other words, how the impact of Amapiano has reached across the continent and the kind of impact that it's making, just highlighting sort of different types of music. I know that South Africa is often seen as a gateway to the continent, and a lot of African countries look to South Africa as a sort of starting point to reach overseas. The way that South Africa might look to, for example, the global north and the west and so on, that one needs to become successful in, say, the US or the UK or Europe in order to be recognized back here. A lot of countries look at us as that sort of achievement to be able to sustain themselves and to build their careers. And so audiences are a big part of social impact as well. In other words, being able to have African music reach different audiences means that we have to look at supply side measures. So we need to understand how we can have more local radio play local music, for example, local streaming. How does that impact the algorithm, and so on? So there's those sorts of conversations that extend beyond sort of the mechanics of the industry and how everything works in terms of the nuts and bolts. We look at audience reception and so on. In terms of measuring your social impact. And, when we talk about things like sustainability, they often refer to climate change or environmental impact. Within the cultural industries, we would talk cultural preservation. In other words, what does it mean to preserve music that is dying out and is no longer of interest to people? And how do we ensure that sort of preservation happens and the different kind of musics reach different kinds of people and they are accessible and researchable to a great degree? And so this means that there needs to be a lot of research in the industry. There needs to be a lot of recognition, especially to create benchmarks. In other words, to say this is what level people should be operating at. That, of course, leads into discussions about education. And, my feeling is that things move beyond entrepreneurship. I'm currently in my PhD looking at professionalism and how professionalism can extend far more into music. And if you think of yourself as a professional, these things come quite naturally because you're trying to make the best of your skills to be able to put into the industry. And so what I mean by this and how it provides social impact is it leads us away from just the business component. It's important, but so is the social and cultural, and of course the actual aspect of making the music, and how does that impact things like getting visas and how artists should be preparing themselves if they do need to get those kinds of matters to begin with. It should not become a surprise. We should be able to isolate these things and make sure that people are aware of them. Research also provides a major milestone in terms of the industry and where we are at, and to be able to say that we have conquered these things. People often cite prior research, such as in South Africa, we have the Copyright Commission that was established. We had the 2002 review of the industry at one point in time that highlighted specific problems that needed to be sorted out. And we need to be able to go back to these things and say, were indeed changes made? And of course, the Copyright Amendment Bill and copyrights components to this are just as important. And then, of course, one of the issues is unionization and association within the industry and how that has become such a major issue. Most organizations within the industry do not mine their member database. What I mean by that is we don't find that a lot of the organizations do not tell you anything about their membership, its makeup, its constitution, what they are interested in. None of that, it seems to be of concern. And I'm not sure what the exact stopgap there is, but if I joined up at a particular organization and they were interested in my circumstance, I would tell them about it, and I'd be quite happy to. Why isn't that happening? Maybe we can get some feedback around that at some point in time. So cultural and market intelligence is a massive stopgap to understanding social change and social impact. And I would suggest that we need an actual research into, musicians' feelings about the industry, and start to do a lot more audience research. So that's my feelings around the issues of information, research, and social impact. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nathan. That was well said. I mean, I think you covered most of the stuff that was said. I'm quite intrigued around the education element because education has been coming up a lot. But then when you say maybe we shouldn't be talking matter at certain conferences, but I'm excited about what could possibly come out beyond this webinar today. Thank you so much. Gugu, it's your turn, bro. If you can just introduce yourself and then just talk to the topic as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right, thank you. I'm also trying to share my screen here so that I can just keep tabs on my points and the very constricted timeline that we have. Is my screen visible?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
All right, no, thank you. So I'll just be building on the foundation that my colleague just laid, looking more into the social impact and looking at the whole creative sector, creative economy from a different lens. My name is Gugule Tunyoni. I'm a developmental economist, currently pursuing my PhD with the University of Johannesburg, and I'm specializing in the fourth industrial revolution and looking at policy transformations that need to happen, particularly in South Africa and in middle income economies, so that these economies that are by and large in the margins of the global economy can get into the mainstream by ensuring that we play an active role in the 4IR as well as in the 5IR. So the subject that we're discussing today is of keen interest to what I do. And maybe just to simplify the lens of our current discussion, there's a fundamental difference between economic growth and economic development. A lot of data that we are fed and that we process, or that we deal with when we're discussing, the economy, the creative economy, its role in the South African economy, in society, and so forth. Most of that narrative comes from the economic growth lens, and not from the economic development lens. Now, The economic growth lens is based on the idea of measuring the economy by your usual GDP. It does not concern and interest itself on the actual material implications of those numbers. So that is economic growth. Now, economic development looks at what the conditions of the people are. So I would imagine you begin to see the difference. So with the economic growth lens, you can be pumping in a lot of numbers, quite exciting, fascinating numbers, but you still have millions of South Africans, for example, languishing in poverty. But you have very impressive GDP figures, but you still have South Africa as one of the most unequal societies in the world. But when you use the lens of economic development, we are focusing on factors of human development to say, how many people have access to clean water, housing, and so forth, the basic needs that people need to survive and to thrive. And we need to now stretch that conversation and use that lens to do our analytics on the creative sector in South Africa from an economic development lens. Because when you use that lens, you begin to see certain things clearer than when you use the economic growth lens. So if we just run with the numbers, the creative industry in South Africa contributes about 4.2 billion, according to the United Development Agency data. And when you come to South Africa, you're looking at 191 billion rands contribution of the creative industry to the South African economy by measure of GDP. That's quite impressive. But the challenge with these numbers is they push the price, they push the numbers, but we don't get to the actual value of this. What does this mean for the South African society? And that is where we need transformation. So my few points that I'm going to share shortly are centered around the issue of social cohesion. Jonathan did touch on the issue of social impact and so forth. So it is upon that foundation that I just want to stretch this a little further. So what we need to come out with is to say, when it comes to our G20 interventions, initiatives, and policies, how can those be orchestrated to foster people-to-people solidarity, and for us to be able to say, how do we measure that, from a social impact point of view? So I would like us to just look at the tangible impact of creativity before we get to the nub of the issue. So there's no denying that the creative economy is a powerhouse for social good. You're looking at your deliverables or benefits such as economic inclusion. Globally, the creative sector has been noted to employ quite an active segment of the demographics, 15 to 29, people aged in that bracket. So it's a huge catchment kind of ecosystem for the very active segment of the population globally. Presents numerous opportunities for youths and even marginalized communities. The creative sector is also critical for building bridges. There's a study that was done by the British Council which shows that about 73% of people in international music projects and so forth tend to report a significant increase in trust and mutual understanding with their cross-cultural partners. So music and arts definitely play a critical role as part of this universal language, this universal thread that binds all of us together, breaking down the barriers faster than any policy position. The creative sector is also central for community well-being. United Nations has conducted quite a number of researches, but the central outcome for our interest is that there are high levels of cultural participation that have been reported and achieved, together with your social trust, civic participation, and overall life satisfaction, coming from cities that have these various creative, arts and culture kind of collaborations, projects, and activities. So the point is that a vibrant music scene makes a city not just more interesting, but fundamentally stronger and more socially and economically resilient. So some of us may be aware, in 2024, South Africa decided to move away from a rudimentary, sort of very basic and limiting framework of measuring social cohesion. So in 2024, we saw the launch.
Sorry, my dear. For just a second, may I ask that you try and like I foresee so many questions that are going to come up from your presentation. So just in the interest of time, try to just concretize it, please. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yes, so we moved from the very basic framework for social cohesion, and we launched a 9-pillar framework. Some of us are familiar with that. The long and short of it is that South Africa has taken a very bold stance in developing a comprehensive framework for social cohesion. In other words, there is a foundation that has already been laid for South Africa and Africa and G20 to build upon that and enable economies and countries to put their monies where their mouths are. So we have a strong social cohesion policy framework and measuring framework. But then what we then need to do is to be able to get the funds to translate and capacitate this sector, this industry, so that it can deliver that, the social impact and so forth. We don't have time to look at this, but when you get time, please do look at this social cohesion index that was launched last year in South Africa. For me, it is the foundation for the vision that we want to see in terms of the actual tangible economic transformations and results that we're looking to push through bodies such as the G20 and all the stakeholders, so that we don't just talk about the high value of the creative sector, what it does for us socially and so forth, but what is it that we can do strategically within our economies to make sure that, therefore, that sector that we say is so crucial to the survival of a solid social fabric is well funded, well supported. So, and this is the last part. The recommendations, therefore, just include urging the G20 to champion and fund a South African-led pilot to prove the creative sector's value as an essential infrastructure for social cohesion. And this can be achieved through mapping and measuring. There can be an intervention to fund the creation of an impact map, where you directly link the sector's activities, e.g. your collaborations, festivals, to the 9 pillars of that framework that we saw, which spotlights social relations, connectedness, focus on the common good, and so forth. And then the other critical part, integrated data collection, bodies like your state's SA, the Departments of Arts and Culture, and so forth, need to be capacitated and supported further to develop standardized creative economy survey module for national data collecting, where we're able to gather this hard data and be able to show and actually indicate and create pathways for how artists can build trust, acceptance, and civic participation. And then ultimately, we should be able to build a business case to be able to say, from the creative sector perspective, here's a platform of open access where you can now begin to talk about social return on investment. We've always been glued to just return on investment where everything is about money, and we need to be able to look at things in a more nuanced, broader, beyond money, GDP, and build stronger economies by leveraging our flourishing creative sector. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Hugo, for that insightful information. The difference between economic growth and economic development. There we are. Ladies and gentlemen, I have two panelists who have made good presentations around data, sustainability, and measuring impact beyond the gross domestic product. And Gugu has just outlined that there is a huge difference between the two. Are there any questions in the house for the two panelists?